After sunset, the other children come out. Every child in the village knew this sentence, but no one dared to say it aloud. In the quiet valley between two ancient hills lay the village of Kandara, a place where red clay huts stood in neat circles and smoke from cooking fires curled lazily into the evening sky. During the day, Kandara was like any other village. Children laughing by the river, women pounding grain, elders sitting beneath the great baobab tree sharing stories older than memory. But when the sun began to sink behind the hills, Kandara changed. The laughter stopped, doors closed, bolts slid into place, and every child in the village was locked inside their home. No exceptions, not even for a moment. The rule was older than the oldest elder, and no one questioned it. Before the sun touches the hills, mothers would warn, you must be inside. Children grew up hearing the warning from the moment they could walk. No child in Kandara had ever been allowed outside after sunset, and no one explained why. Some said it was to keep children safe from wild animals that roamed the forest at night. Others whispered about spirits that wandered when darkness fell. But whenever a child asked too many questions, the elders' faces hardened like stone. Some truths, they would say quietly, are better left sleeping. Yet, curiosity, like fire, cannot be contained forever. And in Kandara, there was one boy whose curiosity burned brighter than fear. His name was Tano. Tano was 12 seasons old, thin and quick, with eyes that noticed everything. While other children obeyed the village rules without question, Tano always wondered about the things no one explained. Why did the elders grow silent whenever someone mentioned the night? Why did the village drum beat 3 slow warnings every evening before sunset? Why did mothers check their door bolts twice, sometimes 3 times before darkness fully arrived? And most mysteriously of all, why did the adults look so relieved when the first rooster crowed at dawn? These questions followed Tano everywhere. One evening, as the sky burned orange and purple above the hills, Tano sat outside his family's hut, watching the shadows stretch across the ground. His mother was preparing the evening meal. His father had already returned from the fields. Everything was normal. Yet, something about the coming darkness felt heavy. The village drum sounded. Boom, boom, boom. 3 slow beats. The warning. Children rushed inside their homes, doors slammed shut one by one. Tano stood slowly. His mother appeared in the doorway. "Tano," she said sharply. "Inside, now." He obeyed, stepping into the dim hut. His mother immediately pushed the wooden door closed and slid the thick bolt into place. Then she checked the small window shutters. Closed, locked. Satisfied, she turned back to the cooking fire. Tano watched her carefully. "Mother," he asked quietly, "why must we lock the doors every night?" She froze, just for a moment. Then she forced a small smile. "To keep you safe." "Safe from what?" She stirred the pot without answering. Outside, the sun dipped lower. The sky darkened. The last sliver of light disappeared behind the hills. Night had come to Kandara.
Inside every home, children sat quietly while their parents spoke in hushed voices. No one laughed at night in Kandara. No one sang. The village became unnaturally silent. Tano lay on his sleeping mat, staring at the roof of woven grass above him. Sleep refused to come. His mind kept returning to the same question. What happens outside after sunset? Hours passed. The fire inside the hut faded into glowing embers. His parents slept. The silence deepened. And then Tano heard something. Footsteps, soft, light, outside the hut. His heart began to pound. It sounded like children walking. More footsteps followed, then quiet whispers. Tano sat up slowly. Children? Outside? That was impossible. Every child in Kandara was locked inside their home. Unless... His chest tightened with a strange mix of fear and excitement. Slowly, very slowly, he crept toward the small window. The wooden shutter was tied shut with a thin rope. Tano hesitated. If his parents woke, he would be punished. But the whispers outside continued. Curiosity won. Carefully, he loosened the rope and pushed the shutter open just enough to peek outside. Moonlight washed over the village, and what Tano saw made his breath stop. Children, dozens of them. They were walking through the village streets, playing, laughing softly, running past huts and climbing over fences. Children his age, smaller children too. But something was wrong, very wrong. Tano pressed his face closer to the window. One boy passed beneath the moonlight, and Tano felt a chill crawl up his spine. The boy looked exactly like Kito, the blacksmith's son. But that was impossible. Kito was locked inside his home just like everyone else. Then Tano noticed another, a girl walking near the well. She looked exactly like Nala, his neighbor. The same braids, the same red cloth dress. But Nala was supposed to be asleep inside her family's hut. More children appeared, each one familiar, each one identical to a real child in the village. Tano's heart pounded louder. They looked like the village children, but something about them felt wrong. Their movements were too smooth, their laughter sounded hollow, and their eyes. When one child turned toward the moonlight, Tano saw them clearly. The eyes were completely black. Not white, not brown, just darkness. A sudden cold wind passed through the village. The children stopped moving all at once, every single one of them. Then slowly, they all turned toward the huts, toward the windows, toward the locked doors, as if they were searching, looking, waiting. Tano's stomach twisted, and then one of them spoke, a small girl standing near the well. Her voice was soft but unnatural. "Soon," she whispered. The others smiled, not like children, like something pretending to be children. "Soon," they repeated. Tano quickly shut the window, his hands shaking. His heart raced as he stumbled back to his sleeping mat. Outside, the whispers continued drifting through the village streets. And for the first time in his life, Tano understood why the adults locked the doors. Because something walked the village at night. Something that looked exactly like the children of Kandara, and it was waiting for a door to open, waiting for a child to step outside, waiting to take their place. Tano did not sleep that night. Long after he shut the window, the whispers outside continued drifting through the village like dry leaves in the wind. Sometimes they laughed, sometimes they ran, sometimes they knocked gently on doors. Tap, tap, tap. Each knock made Tano's heart slam against his ribs. He lay still on his sleeping mat, pretending to sleep whenever his parents shifted in their blankets. But his eyes remained open, wide in the darkness. Those children outside, they looked exactly like the children of Kandara. But they were not. He knew it, and somehow, deep in his bones, he felt something worse. They were waiting for something to happen, waiting for someone to open a door. Hours passed slowly. The moon climbed high above the village. The strange footsteps outside gradually faded. Finally, just before dawn, silence returned. Then came the rooster's crow, the first sound of morning. Immediately, the village began to wake. Doors creaked open, bolts slid back. Adults stepped outside cautiously, scanning the streets before allowing their children out. Life returned to Kandara as if nothing strange had happened. Children ran through the dusty paths, laughing, chasing goats, and kicking small woven balls. Tano stood outside his hut, watching them carefully. Kito was there, the blacksmith's son, alive, normal, laughing with other boys near the well. Tano's stomach twisted.
He had seen Kito outside last night, or something that looked exactly like him. He walked slowly toward the group. "Good morning," Kito said, grinning. Tano studied his face closely. The same eyes, the same smile, the same voice. Yet a question burned in Tano's mind. Did you hear anything last night?" Tano asked carefully. Kito shrugged. "Just the wind. No footsteps, no voices." Kito laughed. "You worry too much, Tano." The other boys joined the laughter. "You sound like the elders," one of them teased. Tano forced a smile, but unease coiled inside him. None of them knew. None of them had seen what he saw. Or maybe they had never dared to look. The entire day passed slowly. Tano tried to behave normally, helping his father carry water from the river and gathering firewood near the forest edge. But his thoughts kept returning to the same image, the black-eyed children walking through the moonlight and the way they had turned toward the huts, searching. That evening, as the sun began to sink again, the familiar tension returned to the village. The drums sounded, boom, boom, boom. Children rushed home, doors closed, both slid into place. Tano's mother checked the window shutters twice before lighting the evening fire. But tonight, Tano was ready. He had made a decision. He needed to see them again. After the meal, his parents lay down to sleep. Tano waited patiently. 1 hour. 2 hours. When their breathing grew deep and steady, he quietly rose from his mat. His hands trembled as he crept toward the window. Slowly, carefully, he loosened the rope again. The shutter opened with a faint creak. Moonlight spilled inside. Tano looked out. At first, the village was empty. The hut stood silent beneath the glowing moon. For a moment, he wondered if he had imagined everything. Then he saw movement near the baobab tree. One child, standing alone.
A small boy. He looked exactly like Bako, the farmer's youngest son. The boy tilted his head slightly, staring at the huts. Then he smiled. More figures appeared from the shadows, dozens of them, the night children. They emerged from between the huts, from behind fences, from the edge of the forest. Their laughter floated softly through the air. They began wandering through the village again. But tonight, Tano noticed something he had missed before. They were copying the real children. One spirit kicked an invisible ball across the dirt. Another pretended to climb a tree. A group near the well played a silent version of tag. They were practicing, learning, studying how the real children behaved. Tano felt a chill spread through his body. "They are learning how to become us," he whispered. Just then, one of them stopped. A girl. She looked exactly like Nala again. Slowly, she turned toward Tano's hut. His heart froze. Her black eyes stared directly at the window. Had she seen him? For several long seconds, neither of them moved. Then she began walking toward the hut. Step, step, step. Tano's breath caught in his throat. She approached slowly, her head tilted in an unnatural way. When she reached the door, she stopped. The girl raised her hand. Tap, tap, tap. The soft knocking echoed through the quiet hut. Tano covered his mouth to stop himself from gasping. His parents stirred slightly in their sleep. Outside, the girl spoke softly. "Tano." His blood turned cold. She knew his name. "Tano," the voice repeated sweetly. "Come outside and play." The voice sounded exactly like Nala's. Perfect, convincing. But Tano remembered the eyes, those empty black eyes. He stayed perfectly still. Outside, the girl waited. Then Her voice changed. The sweetness vanished. "Open the door," she whispered. Silence filled the hut. The girl stood there for several long moments. Then, suddenly, she smiled. Not like a child, like a hunter who knows its prey is hiding nearby. And slowly, she turned away. Tano remained frozen until the footsteps faded. When he finally dared to peek outside again, the spirits were gathering near the well. One of them spoke in a low voice. "They are careful tonight." Another replied, "But one day a door will open." They all laughed, a hollow, chilling sound. Then one of them said something that made Tano's heart nearly stop. "Soon we will take their places." The others nodded. "Yes," the girl whispered. "And when the real children are gone," her black eyes gleamed in the moonlight, "no one will know the difference." Tano shut the window again, shaking with fear. Now he understood the truth. The night children weren't just wandering the village. They were waiting to replace the real children of Kandara. And if the village didn't learn the truth soon, one morning the doors would open and the wrong children would walk outside. Tano could not forget the words he had heard the night before. "Soon we will take their places." The sentence echoed in his mind like a drumbeat. All morning, he watched the children of Kandara with new eyes. They laughed, ran, and played exactly as they always had. Nothing seemed strange. But now, Tano knew something they didn't. Every night, something that looked exactly like them walked through the village, watching, learning, waiting. And if what the spirits said was true, one day they would replace the real children. The thought made Tano's stomach twist. He had to tell someone, but who would believe him? If he told the elders, they might punish him for spying outside at night. If he told his parents, they would simply forbid him from asking questions again. Still, there was one person in Kandara who might listen. An old woman named Mama Zubari. Mama Zubari was the oldest person in the village. Her back was bent like an old tree branch, and her hair was white as moonlight. Most people believed she was nearly 100 seasons old. The elders often visited her when they needed guidance. Some said she remembered stories from before Kandara was even built. If anyone knew the truth about the night children, it would be her. That afternoon, Tano quietly walked to the far edge of the village, where Mama Zubari's hut stood alone beneath a large acacia tree. The old woman was sitting outside grinding herbs in a stone bowl. Without looking up, she spoke. "You walk like someone carrying a heavy secret, child." Tano froze. "How did you—" Mama Zubari chuckled softly. "Your footsteps are nervous." She finally raised her eyes. Sharp, wise eyes that seemed to see far deeper than ordinary sight. "What troubles you?" Tano hesitated. Then he leaned closer and whispered, "I saw them." The old woman's grinding stopped instantly. The air seemed to grow colder. "Saw what?" she asked quietly. "The children outside, after sunset." The stone bowl slipped slightly in her hands. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she slowly looked around to make sure no one else was nearby. "Come inside," she whispered. Inside the hut, shadows filled the corners like silent listeners. Mama Zubari lit a small oil lamp and sat across from Tano. "Tell me everything you saw," she said. Tano explained it all. The whispers, the black eyes, the knocking on the doors, the way the spirits copied the real children. When he finished, Mama Zubari closed her eyes heavily. "I feared this day would come," she murmured. "You believe me?" Tano asked. "Yes," she replied quietly, "because what you saw is real." Tano leaned forward. "Who are they?"
The old woman's voice dropped to a whisper. They are called the Mimiki. Tano frowned. The Mimiki? She nodded slowly. Yes. Long ago, before Kandara existed, these lands belonged to wandering spirits. They had no form of their own, so they watched humans and envied their lives. Her voice grew darker. They learned to imitate people, like reflections in water. But reflections are harmless, Tano said. These are not, Mama Zubari replied. They cannot live in the world of the living unless they replace someone. Tano's heart skipped. Replace? Yes. Her voice trembled slightly. If a Mimiki convinces a human to step outside at night, the spirit can take their form. And the real child, Mama Zubari looked away, vanished. The word hung in the air like a curse. Tano felt his throat tighten. So that's why the village locks the doors? Yes, she said. Many generations ago, children began disappearing. At first, no one understood why. She leaned closer, until one mother noticed something strange. What? The child who returned home in the morning wasn't her son anymore. Tano's skin crawled. The Mimiki had taken his place.
Tano felt a chill spread through his body. And the real child? Mama Zubari shook her head slowly. No one ever saw him again. Silence filled the hut. Then Tano whispered something that made the old woman's eyes widen. They said something last night. What did they say? Tano swallowed. They said soon they will take the children's places. Mama Zubari's hands began trembling. That means they are growing stronger. What does that mean? Tano asked. It means the barrier between their world and ours is weakening. She stood slowly and walked to the doorway, staring toward the village. If even one child opens a door, her voice faded. Then what? Tano asked nervously. She turned back. Then the Mimiki will enter our world. Tano felt his heart racing. And if that happens, the old woman's face darkened. They won't stop with children. Outside, the evening drum suddenly sounded. Boom, boom, boom. The warning for sunset. Mama Zubari grabbed Tano's arm. You must go home now. But what can we do? Tano asked. The old woman hesitated. There is only one protection. What is it? The doors must stay closed. Her voice grew firm. No child must ever go outside after sunset. Tano thought about the spirits knocking on doors, calling children by name, tricking them with familiar voices. What if someone opens a door by mistake? He asked. Mama Zubari's expression turned grave. Then the Mimiki will finally enter Kandara. Tano left the hut with fear weighing heavily in his chest. The sun was already touching the hills. Children ran home quickly. Doors slammed shut. Bolts slid into place. Night returned to Kandara. But this time, Tano knew the truth behind the darkness. And as he lay awake on his mat, listening to the quiet village, he feared something terrible was coming. Because outside, in the moonlight, the Mimiki were waiting. And tonight, they sounded closer than ever. That night, Tano did not wait long before looking outside. The moment his parents fell asleep, he slipped quietly to the window and loosened the rope once again. His fingers trembled as he pushed the wooden shutter open just enough to see the village. The moon was brighter tonight. Its pale light washed over Kandara like cold water. For several moments, nothing moved. The hut stood silent. The dead paths were empty. Tano wondered if perhaps the Mimiki had not come. But then a shadow moved near the well. One child stepped into the moonlight, then another, and another. Within seconds, the entire village seemed filled with them. Dozens of children walked the paths of Kandara. Their voices floated through the air like distant echoes. They laughed, they whispered, they played strange silent games beneath the baobab tree. But tonight, something was different. They were not wandering aimlessly anymore. They were watching the huts, studying them, waiting. Tano's heart beat faster. It felt as if the Mimiki were preparing for something. Then suddenly one of them spoke loudly. Tonight. The other stopped moving. Every spirit turned toward the center of the village. Tonight we try again. Tano felt cold fear grip his chest. Try what? The spirits gathered together near the well. Among them, Tano noticed the girl who had knocked on his door before, the one who looked like Nala. She stepped forward like a leader. "They are afraid," she said softly. "They hide behind their doors like frightened animals." Another spirit laughed. "But fear makes humans careless." The girl nodded slowly. "All we need is one mistake." The Mimiki spread out across the village. Some moved toward the huts. Others climbed fences or sat on rooftops. They looked exactly like the real children of Kandara. If someone saw them in daylight, no one would notice anything strange, except for their eyes. Those empty black eyes. Tano's stomach twisted. He watched as one Mimiki approached the hut belonging to Bako, the youngest boy in the village. Bako was only 6 seasons old. The spirit stood outside his door and knocked gently. Tap, tap, tap. A small voice came from inside the hut. "Who is it?" The Mimiki smiled. "It's me, Bako," the spirit said sweetly. The voice was perfect, exactly like Bako's own voice. Inside the hut, the real Bako sounded confused. "But I'm Bako." Outside, the spirit giggled softly. "No, silly, I'm outside. Come play with me." Tano's heart pounded wildly. The Mimiki was trying to trick him. Inside the hut, Bako's tiny voice answered again. "My mother said never open the door at night." The spirit leaned closer to the door. "But it's me," it whispered. "Your friend." The door latch rattled slightly. Tano's breath caught in his throat. Bako was reaching for it. "No," Tano whispered urgently, even though the boy couldn't hear him. "Don't open it." Inside the hut, a woman's voice suddenly shouted, "Bako, step away from the door." The latch stopped moving. The Mimiki smile vanished instantly. The door remained closed. For a moment, the spirit stood perfectly still. Then its face twisted with anger. "You are close," another Mimiki said quietly from the shadows. "Yes," the girl who looked like Nala replied. "Very close." She looked toward the huts thoughtfully. "They are careful tonight, but they cannot stay careful forever." The spirits began gathering together again near the well. Tano watched nervously. Then something happened that made his blood run cold. Another Mimiki stepped forward. This one looked exactly like him. The same face, the same hair, the same clothes. The copy tilted its head, studying the huts. "Tomorrow night," it said calmly. "I will try." The other spirits nodded. "Yes," the girl replied. "If they see their own reflection outside, they might trust it." Tano's entire body froze. They were planning to use his face, his voice, his appearance to trick someone. The Mimiki version of Tano turned slowly toward his hut, and their black eyes met through the window. For a moment, neither moved. Then the spirit smiled, a slow, chilling smile. "You are watching," it whispered. Tano slammed the shutter closed immediately. His hands shook violently. They knew he had been spying on them. Outside, faint laughter drifted through the air. "You cannot hide forever," the Mimiki Tano called softly. "Soon, someone will open a door." The footsteps slowly faded as the spirits disappeared once more into the night. Tano leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Now the danger was worse than ever. The Mimiki were not just trying to trick random children anymore. They were planning something bigger, something smarter. And tomorrow night, they would use his own face to do it. Tano knew one thing for certain. If he stayed silent,
Someone in the village would eventually open a door. And when that happened, the Mimiki would finally enter Kandara. He had a terrible choice to make: warn the village and reveal what he had done, or pretend he had never seen anything. Outside, the wind whispered through the dark streets, and somewhere in the shadows, the Mimiki were waiting for tomorrow night. Tano did not sleep that night. The words of the Mimiki echoed in his mind. Tomorrow night, I will try. They would use his face, his voice, his likeness. Someone in the village might see him outside and believe it was really him. And if that happened, a door would open and Kandara would lose a child forever. The next day passed slowly, like a shadow creeping across the earth. Tano watched the village carefully. Children played beside the river, laughing in the sunlight. Mothers prepared food. Elders sat beneath the great baobab tree discussing the harvest. Everything seemed peaceful. Yet Tano knew the truth. Night would come again, and with it, the Mimiki. By late afternoon, the weight in his chest became too heavy to carry. He remembered Mama Zubari's warning. Some truths are dangerous, but silence can be worse. As the sun began to sink toward the hills, Tano ran to the center of the village. The elders were sitting beneath the baobab tree. He stopped before them, breathing hard. I have something to tell you. The elders looked up with surprise. One of them frowned. What troubles you, boy? Tano swallowed his fear. Then he told them everything. The spirits, the black eyes, the knocking at the doors, the Mimiki copying the children, and the one that looked exactly like him. The elders listened silently. When he finished, the oldest elder slowly stood. His face was pale. You have seen what most children never see, he said quietly. Another elder sighed deeply. The Mimiki grew restless again. Tano blinked. You knew? The old man nodded. We have always known. He looked toward the hills where the sun was fading. That is why the doors are locked. But they are planning something tonight, Tano said urgently. The elders exchanged worried glances. Then the oldest elder turned to the villagers gathering nearby. Tonight, he said firmly, no door opens, no matter what voice calls outside. The village drum sounded loudly. Boom, boom, boom. Night fell. Inside every hut, the doors were locked tighter than ever before. Tano sat beside his parents, listening to the silence outside. Then it began. Footsteps, whispers, soft laughter. The Mimiki had returned. Moments later, a voice came from outside Tano's door. His own voice. Tano, it called gently. Come outside. His parents looked at him in alarm. The voice knocked softly. Tap, tap, tap. Tano, it's you. But no one moved. Across the village, the same trick was happening. Voices of friends, voices of children, voices calling from the darkness. Yet every door remained closed. The Mimiki grew frustrated. Their whispers turned to angry murmurs. Finally, just before dawn, the spirits faded back into the shadows. The rooster crowed. Morning came. Doors opened slowly across Kandara. Children stepped outside safely. None had disappeared. The Mimiki had failed. From that day forward, the elders added one more rule to the village tradition. Children were told the truth because the greatest protection against deception was knowledge. And even today, elders in Kandara still warn their children, after sunset, stay inside, because sometimes in the darkness, something may be walking the village streets, something that looks exactly like you.